From then on, we concentrated purely and simply on youth because that was my whole wish for the club. Not only the great side was to continue having.
We watched the England trials, Scottish trials, Welsh trials, and chose, as we thought, the best of the youngsters. Not only us chased the youngsters, but I think we were the first to start making our own players at Manchester United.
I think Jimmy Murphy and Matt Busby, one of those famous salt and vinegar partnerships, Barnum and Bailey, very different types of men, but that's often what makes a good partnership. Sir Matt, father figure, very shrewd, making decisions at the top. But of course, producing a football team goes a long way down the line. And Jimmy Murphy was the nitty-gritty man of the partnership. He was the man who would go down in the old days on Tuesday and Thursday evenings and take the kids who were sent along. Bert Wally would handle them first. Then they would move up from first year to second year. Jimmy Murphy would take them.
Jimmy Murphy, who was the assistant manager at that time, picked me up when I first arrived at Exchange Station, and I had my Big Mac on, you know, and my bag ready for I was coming into the big world away from the northeast, and he took me to my digs and he said, I've got this lad who I'm dying for you to play with. We got him last year from Dudley in Staffordshire, Duncan Edwards, and he says, what a player, what a player. He's good in the air, good right foot, good left foot, strong in the tackle, reads the game brilliantly, can play in any position, and scores goals at will, literally. And he says, and when I knock all the rough edges off him, I'm going to make him a decent player.
I'm an Edwards fanatic. Is a fact. He was the most complete footballer I've ever seen. He had strength, power in both feet, he had 40 and 50 yards balls with consummate ease.
He was like a man playing with boys. When he was, if you can imagine, it's 16, 17, well, I think it was 17 or 18, he was picked for England and was an automatic choice immediately.
Eddie Coleman, he only weighed about 9 stone, wet through, little Eddie. Tremendous player. Eddie Coleman would have been a star today in his own right.
He hadn't got a weak. I don't think he got a weakness, even though he's so small. I mean, you'd be sprinting down the track and all of a sudden something would come past you. It's this little fella.
Little Eddie, if you can imagine me coming from the northeast, I'd never seen drainpipe trousers or anything, you know, like, and there's this little cocky lad, you know, from Salford swaggering around saying that he was the best, you know, and he did things with the ball that I considered were arrogant, you know, and really out of place in football, but he did it and the crowd loved him, you know.
Jimmy would say, that one will make it, that one won't, that one will, that one won't. And that's an enormous help if you can get somebody making those right decisions. And Jimmy did make the right decisions. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been the Busby Babes.
It came on just like clockwork. Wonderful. They all fitted into the Old Trafford groove. They were Old Trafford minded, our own products, our own future stars, and quite a few of them came into our first team at a very, very young age indeed.
Birmingham open with a swift attack, but the Babes are quite unruffled, and very soon it's Birmingham's Gil Merrick who has to worry. John Barry receives and makes for the penalty area. He beats Ken Green, everyone expects him to pass, but he fools them all and shoots! Manchester fans are wild with joy, but there's more to come. Outside left, David Pegg is on the move straight from the restart. Jeff Hall blocks him, but he retrieves it and tries again. Over to Bobby Charlton, who slams it home. By half-time, the excitement's too much for some of the fans. But Busby's Babes start the second half in cracking form with that slippery winger, David Pegg, on the move again and passing to Billy Whelan. Whelan beats Merrick, but it hits the post. Here's Madrid on the attack. Centre forward to Stefano shoots, but goalie Wood tips it round. But after the interval, Manchester really start getting down to work. Left winger Pegg has the ball. He centres, it bounces off Taylor, and Whelan makes sure of it. Manchester are the youngest cup team ever, but they start off like veterans. Manchester winger Johnny Berry beats his man and cuts across to pass to Taylor. Taylor moves in, but goalie Nigel Sims dives at his feet. Tommy Taylor has it, and Manchester are on the move. No sign of Wembley nerves about these boys. In spite of his injured jaw, Ray Wood's back in play, taking the right wing for the time being. To help him out, Manchester concentrate on the left till he finds his feet. But their attack is handsomely held by goalie Sims. Into the centre, and it's the same again. Duncan Edwards takes it. And Taylor finds the net.
We had success at youth team level. In the Youth Cup, we won it 5 years on the run, and I was lucky enough to play in the middle three. Now, these were the big things I remembered about Manchester United, growing up with the real Busby babes.
I remember we played them at Deepdale, and I was at Preston North End, and we were a very good side. And at 3:20 we were 5 down, and they were only kids then.
All of those players had something to offer. I mean, Jeff Bent, who was a reserve, I'm sure, could have played for England. That was the quality that was there.
It was very hard to keep a place in this club. Very difficult, because nobody wanted to leave, you know. You didn't get anybody that said, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm off. You know, there's nowhere else to go.
On the fringe of a Munich airport lies the wreckage of an airliner, still smouldering from a crash in which 21 people were killed. Tragedy enough at any time. But in that plane were a group of young men who were almost the personal friends of millions. Manchester United, the finest soccer team Britain has produced since the war. And 7 of them died in the crash. 10 others, as well as their famous manager, Matt Busby, were injured. Some so seriously that their lives hung in the balance. Busby's babes, as they were affectionately called, were on their way home from Belgrade when the disaster struck. They were on top of the world. Their 3-goal draw with Yugoslavia's Red Star team had put them through to the European Cup semi-finals. They had high hopes of the English FA Cup. Now those hopes are snuffed out, like the lives of 7 of their finest players.
Only the day before, they'd met Red Star in Belgrade in their European Cup tie. United had been quick to take the lead. This was through a goal by Denis Law, one of those injured in the crash. In the first half, the British team were making rings round the Yugoslavs, and they scored their second thanks to Bobby Charlton, another of the injured. This is how all would like to remember the boys of this great team playing typically fine football.
And I was saying prayers that people like Eddie Coleman and Dave Pegg would be all right, not knowing that a lot of people already knew that they'd been killed.
Duncan Edwards injured, Bill Fuchs injured. Mark Jones killed. Ray Wood injured. Eddie Coleman killed. David Pegg killed. Denis Law injured, Tommy Taylor killed. Roger Byrne killed. Bill Whelan killed, John Barry injured. Matt Busby was their worst problem. For 2 days he lay between life and death with one of his lungs completely deflated. Then came the welcome news, Matt was off the danger list.
And then it was my wife actually that came in one day and said, he's asked so many times who's ill, who's bad, who has died. I think it's time we were telling them the truth. And of course, when I mentioned thy name, the other nodded the head, which meant that they'd been killed.
It's something we very rarely talk about, but there's a big chunk of our minds often think about the people, the actual day and the accident and the people who died, and the press people as well, everybody.
We know what history says that they were great and everything else, and I'm quite sure, I agree with the boys, there was such a tremendous amount of talent on that side. I don't know, I think we could have won the boat race.
Into Liverpool Street Station came 2 who survived the disaster unharmed, Harry Gregg, goalkeeper, and Billy Fuchs, accompanied by assistant manager Jim Murphy.
I had this great empire of ours to run, I used to dodge back and forth to Munich to see the Matt and the boys, of course, and so back again, starting the job. Of course, I had only 2 or 3 first-team players left. So I had to buy 1 or 2. I bought little Ernie Taylor from Blackpool and Stan Crothers from Aston Villa.
Lads really that had really should never have been in the team were being thrown into this unbelievable atmosphere. People like Bobby Harrop, you know, Shea Brennan came into the team, people like that. Playing out of position, everybody was playing out of position. 3rd-team players suddenly were 1st-team players now. So I came to the first Sheffield match, which poor old Sheffield had no chance.
Less than a fortnight after the Munich air crash, the Babes are fielding a scratch side for a 5th-round FA Cup tie. And apart from Fuchs himself, the only member of the original team is goalie Harry Gregg. But from the start, they look more like champions than a forlorn hope. Within a few minutes, they're giving Sheffield goalie Brian Riles some work to do. And the 60,000 crowd at Old Trafford, who came prepared to make all the allowances in the world, can hardly believe their eyes. Scratch team or no, this is straight out of the Busby mould. Now the United forwards are on the attack, and that was nearly it. Brennan takes the corner, and it's in. Second half, and Manchester United are still incredibly 1 goal up and fighting every minute of the way. Mark Pearson's shot rebounds, but Seamus Brennan's there to land a beauty. "17-year-old Mark Pearson has the ball. Alec Dawson's ready to receive, and there's number 3. Old Trafford's seen some many great days, but for brilliant triumph over disaster, surely none will ever be as great as this.
And saw you through to the next round.
Through the next round.
And that was against West Bromwich?
West Bromwich, yes, at West Brom, the first one. And Bobby at Charlton was in this stage of recuperating after his accident during Munich. Took him quite a while. He played at West Brom. Terrific game there, 2 at West Brom. 2 each. And the replay was at Old Trafford.
Nurses and doctors are cheered to the echo as they walk out onto the Old Trafford turf. Waiting for them is one of their ex-patients, goalie Harry Gregg, who presents a bouquet to Sister Lieselotte Pippi, youngest of the party. And now brought from Germany by Empire News, the voice of Matt Busby himself.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking from my bed in the Iser Hospital, Munich, where I have been since the tragic accident of just over a month ago. You will be glad, I'm sure, to know that the remaining players here and myself are now considered out of danger.
One more player had since died of his injuries, Duncan Edwards.
So that then puts you through into the semi-finals?
Against Fulham, the first of which was played at Villa Park, another tremendous battle. And then that's a draw again. The replay was at the Arsenal, which I thought was a bit unkind, taking a Manchester side to London, with Fulham being a London side. But again, God was on our side, David. We won 5-3. The boys were magnificent.
They would say I was finished with football for all time. And I was very strong about this at the time. And I let it go for a few days, and I always remember again quoting my wife saying, well, you please yourself, you know what's in your mind, but I'm sure these lads would want you to carry on. The lads that lost their lives would want you to carry on. And that started a new germ in my mind of thinking towards probably looking at it and probably in time going back towards the club again.
In spite of his injured leg, Matt is in great spirits, as happy as a schoolboy at the prospect of seeing his beloved team again. The team who have certainly not disgraced his faith in them during these difficult weeks, and who have won their way to Wembley when even their best friends feared they were finished for months to come. And if there's